So we'll be looking at one of those events that are recorded in the Bible. Because sometimes we call them stories. I don't like calling them stories. Daniel in the lion's den was not a story. That was an event that really happened. Stories to me like could be fictional type of stories. Something that you make up. But that really happened. So we'll be looking in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 1 to 12. 2 Samuel 6, 1 to 12. Now, today I would like to make a special request. Because of the time left for us for this message, and for you to get the essence of the message, can you please remove every distractions? Apart from reading the scriptures in your Bible, no social media during service. Please. Because otherwise, it's a story that you need to really get what he's saying to us today in terms of what we need to be as children of God. So this is how it reads. It said, David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who sits enthroned on the cherubim. And they carried the ark on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with songs and lyre and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it. For the oxen stumbled, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah. And God struck him there because of his error, and he died there beside the ark of God. And David was angry because the Lord had broken out against Uzzah. And that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day. And he said, How can the ark of the Lord come to me? So David was not willing to take the ark of the Lord into the city of David. But David took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. And the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. And it was told King David, the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. See, there's something powerful about the presence of God. Where his presence dwells, life changes. When the ark of the covenant rested in Obed-Edom's house, everything about that house shifted. His story invites us to ask an important question. Do I have a heart for the house? A heart for God's presence and for God's people. So if you're making a note today, the title for this sermon is A Heart for the House. The spirit of Obed-Edom. See, David longed to bring the ark, the visible symbol of God's presence, back to Jerusalem. Now, for the background, Israel went to war against the Philistines, and they were being defeated in war, so they decided to bring the ark to the war front to save them. And the ark of God was captured by the Philistines. And so they took it to Ekron and put it into the house of their god, Dagon. And their god, when they got there in the morning, fell down flat before the ark. And they were wondering what's going on here. So they put Dagon back up. That's when you serve a God that is not really God, you need to help them to get back up, isn't it? So the following day, they went back. Dagon was not only falling on his face, his hands and feet were cut off. At that time, they knew that something was not right. And then they got afflicted with tumors. And they had mice running all over their city. Then they knew that the hand of God was against them. And they quickly identified that it was because of the ark of God, the presence of God, that this has happened. So they took it from Ekron and they sent it to another city. As soon as the people saw the ark, they said, no, you're not bringing this ark to our city. Because the same thing happened to them. The men broke out in tumors. And so they kept moving it from city to city. When he got to, it started out in Ashdod. By the time he got to Ekron, the minute they saw it, they called their lords. They said, you need to send this back to where it belongs. And so that was the background. So they decided, okay, we're going to send it back. But from what we know, we cannot send it back without a guilt offering. So they made images in the form of the tumors and the mice, one for each of their cities. So they had five of them made up. So they brought a new cart, and now they had 2 oxen or 2 cows that were basically breastfeeding, and they took away their cows, and they took 2 of them and attached the cart to it and decided, if indeed this was our problem, this is what is bringing all this calamity on us. If the cows head straight for the land of Israel, we know that's the problem. So as soon as they hitch up everything, the cow headed straight for Beth-Shemesh without them guiding it. It was heading straight. So they were following it until they got to the border of Beth-Shemesh, and then in the field of Joshua, the cow stopped there. And so the people of Beth-Shemesh, they saw the ark and they started rejoicing. They rejoiced because they knew the importance of the ark. Because the physical presence of God at that time rested there. But you know what happened? It's not just this episode with Uzzah that died. On that day, the men of Beth-Shemesh went and looked into the ark. You know how many of them died? 70 men died just from doing that. So that's the background. So as we walk our way through, we see what is really going on here. So David longed to bring the ark back to Jerusalem. It had been in the house of Abinadab for 20 years at this point. 20 years. when they put it in the house of Abinadab, after these 70 men died, they appointed his son Eleazar to look after the ark of God. So it moved. When David and his men tried to move it, they placed it on a cart, and the episode that happened, and Uzzah died there. Now, they decided, David said, no, I'm not bringing this to my place. So they decided to leave it in the house of Obed-Edom. And because of that, Obed-Edom household, himself, and everybody, God bless. So before we go further, let's just understand some of the key words about the title for this message, the heart for the house. The heart is the very core of your being, your passion, your motivation, your courage. See, Jesus said in Matthew 6:21, he said that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. See, your heart follows your investments. Your heart follows your investments. What you give your time, your energy, and your emotions to reveals what you truly treasure. And I see sometimes people are passionate about saving the seals and the dolphins. And which I'm not really against it, but the energy, the time, the resources they pour into it, and I'm saying, these things have no eternal value. So what you pour your time, your energy, and emotions to reveals where your treasure really is. And the house can refer to a building, like we are. But biblically speaking, it often represents God's people. Paul calls the church in 1 Timothy 3:15 the household of God. So you are part of the building. You are living stones in that building, which is the building of God. And Jesus said that all who do the will of his Father are part of his family. In Matthew 12:48-50. So when we ask, do I have a heart for the house? Do you have a heart for the house? What we are asking is, do I have a passion for God and for his people? And that's a deep question that you need to ask yourself. Because most of us have resigned ourselves to saying, let me just make it to church on Sunday so that I can mark the register. That's a very bad situation to be in. And I'm not making any apology for saying that. It should be more than that. There should be fire in your bones when it comes to God, his people, his house, his presence. A heart for the house is ultimately a heart after God himself. So if you get nothing from today's message, remember this. To have a heart for the house is to have a heart after God. Psalm 37 verse 4 says that delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. You see, we like to have the desires of our heart, but you will not get it if you do not delight yourself in the Lord. And it has nothing to do with God. That is an open-ended statement. If you delight yourself in the Lord, the desires of your heart will be met. See, when we direct our hearts towards God, he shapes our desires to match his own desires. We may not get everything we ask for, but one thing I know is we will always get more of him. In John 14:23, Jesus says, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. That's what it means to have a heart after God. You love him enough to do what he says. See, the true faith isn't just information, because sometimes that's what we're after. I know this Bible verse, I know this one, I know you can admonish people with it. No, it's not just information. It's transformation through obedience. That's what it is. It's not about knowing the word of God, it's about living it. A heart after God says, Lord, whatever you ask, I will do. Whatever. In Psalm 42 verse 1, David said, as the deer pants for the flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. When a deer is thirsty, it doesn't matter how far the brooks, the river, the stream. If you need to drag, if you need to run, whatever he needs to do, that's what David is describing. As the deer pants for the flowing streams. Number 3 is a heart for God's people. We have a heart after God, a heart for the house, a heart for God's people. See, a heart for the house is also a heart for God's people. You can't have a heart for God and not have a heart for his people. If you operate like that, there's a disconnect. God's desire has always been to bless his people. Not just so we can receive, but so that we can be a blessing. Each of us has something God can use. Because that's what limits us sometimes. I don't have anything. I have nothing to give. But we all have something. Something that God can use. Our time, our talents, and our treasure. See, when you serve in the house of God, you're not just filling a role. You're reflecting his love. Because sometimes we serve and we think we're doing a favor to people. No, you're doing yourself a favor by serving. And as I said, going forward, we need more hands. Because where we are going, there will be a lot more people than we are contending with here. And we need more hands to carry that load. So start getting yourself ready if you haven't moved a finger in this church. Because there's work to be done. You might say, I'm not gifted like others. Or I don't have much to offer. But you need to remember this. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He said, my power is made manifest in your weakness. Because if you're qualified, then God doesn't need you. It's your weakness, it's your deficiency that he's going to use. Because he will show himself mighty in those areas of your life. So a heart for the house says, Lord, here I am. Use me. Here I am. Use me. So I'm going to go back to the example of Obed-Edom. See, Obed-Edom is one of the most fascinating figures in Scripture. To me, he's an unsung hero. For most of us may not know, most of us who know about this event may not know that he wasn't an Israelite. If you go back through the passage that we read, twice is one mentioned that Obed-Edom the Gittite. He's a Philistine. He wasn't an Israelite. He's possibly from Gath, where Goliath is from. So he's a foreigner. And yet, God chose him, chose his house to host his presence. See, when others hesitated, Obed-Edom welcomed the ark of God into his house. Honestly speaking, an ark that just kills somebody, to be honest, I won't be too eager to bring it into my house. 70 men already died before then. But as a foreigner, what possessed him? What motivated him to want to bring the ark of God into his house? He wasn't afraid. He didn't try to control it. He simply made room for it, for God's presence. For 3 months, that home became a sanctuary. We don't know how they arranged the ark, but we can imagine they have to reorientate everything around it. Because that's not something you mess with. I wonder sometimes in which part of his house did he put it? No, seriously speaking. So they need to redesign their house in some form, rearrange things, because he knows that you don't mess with the presence of God. And I'm sure he taught his household the same thing. So that everybody knew, guys, don't go and be peeping in that ark. The ark wasn't just a piece of furniture. It represented the holy presence of God. So in making space for the ark, they made space for transformation. And the same happens to us. When we make God's presence central, he changes everything around us and everything within us. God's presence. You see, we read that story, and it's amazing that that ark was in the house of Abinadab for 20 years. What did the man learn about the ark of God, the presence of God, in 20 years for such a terrible mistake to have happened to his own son? That's for me, that was the most distressing part of that story. 20 years. This man only had the ark for 3 months. And God blessed his house. In transporting it from the house of Abinadab, why wasn't he there? Why did he have to send 2 of his sons who were not even familiar with it? Because Eleazar, his son, was appointed to look after the ark. I will expect that Abinadab and Eleazar will be in front, leading the ark to where he was going. Even though it wouldn't have made too much of a difference anyway. And you'll soon find out. But when we make God's presence central in our lives, he changes everything around us and everything within us. Our values will shift. Our priorities will change. Forgiveness comes easier. Peace begins to flow. And joy becomes natural. See, they all did it wrong. And that's why the period between, in those 3 months, David went and did his own work in how to transport the ark. You don't put the ark on a cart with cows driving it and it's kind of shaking and all of that, and the tendency for it to tumble over. In 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 15, when they had to do it the second time, they said that the Levites carried the ark of God on their shoulders with the poles, as Moses had commanded according to the word of the Lord. Don't put it on the cart. There was an instruction. And this is what we need to know. Follow the prescription in the word of God. You're safe. The blessing will follow. What the God promised will always follow. But you think, this is what I want to do? God is not responsible. God wasn't responsible for the death of Uzzah or those 70 men. There was an instruction given by God through Moses to the people of Israel. Why didn't Abinadab know about that for 20 years? This shows us faithfulness, humility, and legacy in the life of Obed-Edom. When David heard that Obed-Edom's house was blessed, he brought the ark to Jerusalem. But you know what happened? Obed-Edom didn't stay back. He followed the presence. In 1 Chronicles, you can read the whole chapter when you get home. 1 Chronicles chapter 15 and 16 showed that he became a gatekeeper when the resting place was built for the ark. He didn't want to leave God's presence. He became a gatekeeper. He was one of the porters in the house of God. Not only that, he was a singer. He played the harp. He ministered constantly before the ark. He served continually in the house of God. If you look at the list of the different people that David appointed to different roles, almost in every segment, the name of Obed-Edom showed up. This man was addicted to the presence of God. We don't know what he was doing before that time, but apparently he gave that up to devote himself to the service of God and to be close to the presence of God. He didn't serve for attention. He served out of love. And the blessing extended not just for him, it also to his children. Because if you read 1 Chronicles 15 and 16, 62 of his descendants also served in the house of God. 62 of them. You see, where the head goes, the body will follow. And that's why it's important that men will serve God with everything that they have. Because the possibility is very high that their children will do the same. 62 of his descendants also served God. And that's what legacy look like. Faithfulness in one generation creates blessing in the next, and the one after that, and the one after that. When we value God's presence above all else, our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will too. But what does this mean for us today as we begin to close? Obed-Edom's story shows us that hosting God's presence changes everything. It might require rearranging your home, your time, your heart. But the reward is beyond measure. David said in Psalm 84 verse 10, said, a single day in your court is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a gatekeeper in the house of my God than to live in the tents of wickedness. Because we are so caught up in a lot of things that take so much of our time. We pour ourselves into it, and you ask yourself, what's that doing for God? The same passion that David had for the house of God, for God's presence, that was Obed-Edom's heart. And it should be ours too. We can come up with reasons not to serve. We all have reasons. I'm tired. I'm busy. It rained. I'm not qualified. See, but God simply looks for willing hearts. Evaluate what you do with your time daily. You see, when people are badly in debt, and you go to those debt management services, the first thing they get you to do is to track your spending. They say, write down everything you spend money on for a week. You buy a cup of coffee, you pay for this and you pay for that. They want to see what is draining you. They want to have an idea where your heart is. If you want to know a man's heart, check his bank account details. What you're spending your money on shows where your heart is. And the same thing with your time. Track for 1 week what you have spent the 24 hours for. If you spend it sleeping, we know where your heart is. You understand? Track it. Record it for a week. It will highlight where your heart is and how much of it is going to God. See, if a converted Philistine could host the ark and become a worshiper, so can we. God isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for preference. Those who prefer his presence above all else will experience his blessing. Quite simple. So you need to cultivate the heart for the house. And how do we do that? How do we develop the heart for the house? You need to value God's presence. Make him central, not optional. Serve faithfully. Do whatever you can with a joyful spirit. Love God's people. The church may be imperfect, but it's deeply loved by God. So you should love God's people. Build for the next generation. Let your faith outlive you. Some people built this for us. We are building for others. And that's what it's all about. When you give God your heart, he fills your heart with his glory. So the question today for you is, what on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? It's a serious question. You need to be asking yourself that daily. What on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? God still blesses the homes that welcome his presence. He still transforms lives and makes room for him. Let's be a people who will say, Lord, our hearts and our houses belong to you. And I pray that may our homes, our ministries, our work, our relationship revolve around his presence. Because when God finds a heart for his house, he fills it with his spirit, marks it with his favor, and uses it to bless generations.